In the spring of 2025, the Missouri state government executed a hostile takeover of the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department. When the legislature passed House Bill 495, oversight of the police department was taken away from the mayor of the city of St. Louis and placed under a board of commissioners appointed by the governor. HB 495 effectively reversed a 2012 statewide vote that placed the department under local control. Proponents of this bill will tell you that it's meant to improve the public safety of the city of St. Louis. That is a lie. Their goals were much more insidious. So the questions are how and why. Let's start with how. How did the state take over the Metropolitan Police Department in St. Louis? There are only two cities in the entire United States whose police department is overseen by the state's governor rather than the city's mayor. Those are St. Louis and Kansas City, both in Missouri. In order to understand why Missouri's governor has control of both the St. Louis and Kansas City police departments, we have to go all the way back to America's first Civil War. Let's be honest, there might be another one coming up here pretty soon. The first time these police departments were placed under the control of the governor was in 1861, right at the beginning of the Civil War. The takeover at that time was part of a larger military strategy on behalf of the Confederacy. Missouri's governor, Claiborne Fox Jackson, or as I like to call him, Emo Abraham Lincoln, was a Confederate sympathizer who basically wanted to take over the police departments so he could hand over St. Louis's stocked arsenal to the Confederacy. But in typical Confederate fashion, the governor took a huge L when the U.S. Army stopped him and his secessionist buddies from emptying the armory in St. Louis. This is known as the Camp Jackson Affair and is cited as one of the reasons that Missouri never officially committed to the Confederacy during the war. But it's important to remember that the first time the governor took over the police departments of these cities, it was to take something from the city without their permission. Now, about that 2012 vote. In 2012, a statewide ballot initiative allowed St. Louis to regain local control of their police department. Meaning, by a popular vote of the people, St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department was folded into the city's Public Safety Department, which reports to the mayor. This is how every city in the United States works. But House Bill 495 overturned that vote without a statewide ballot measure. They wrote and passed a bill that allowed them to take over the police department without asking anyone from St. Louis or Missouri if they should. So we know how they did it, but why? Why did Missouri Republicans go against their voters, go against norms, and take over the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department? It wasn't to improve public safety. Crime had been on a steady decline for the last 5 years under local control. They ignored or explicitly rejected the data showing that crime had been going down. And they claimed that the city's safety could only be improved by recruiting more officers to the police force. They also claimed that state takeover would somehow help recruitment. There is no evidence to back either of these claims. They're just talking points. Crime is tied to poverty and educational opportunities and city revenue, all things that this legislature is completely unwilling to fix. And even if they did fix these problems, police recruitment is down nationwide. So why? Why did they take over the police department? You have to understand that for members of the Missouri GOP, the city of St. Louis is simply something to be extracted from. They explicitly reject that anyone would want to live here, especially white people. And since the people that do live here mostly disagree with their policies, they don't really feel they have an obligation to provide us with the same rights and opportunities as our rural and suburban neighbors. But we have the Cardinals and the Arch and Forest Park, and they like bringing their families here even though in the media they claim that the city is a dangerous hellhole. It's not just elected Republicans who feel this way about the city, it's also their wealthy donors. There's this one guy named Mike Rayner. He doesn't live in the city, but he spent millions of dollars to push this state takeover. He hired lobbyists and donated over $2 million to various Republican campaigns. People like Mike and Brad Christ, the sponsor of the bill, they're afraid of cities. Diversity scares them. Their ideal version of St. Louis is one where they drive their truck directly into Busch Stadium and see a host of police officers keeping all the urban people out. And then they drive back to West County after the game, never having supported a local business or interacted with any city resident at all. And they can't achieve that dream without a bunch of police officers to arrest anyone who looks at them funny when they're within city limits. Now, I should note here that there was immense support for state takeover from the rank-and-file police officers in St. Louis, which makes sense. Missouri Republicans have offered them huge pay raises and increased recruitment numbers. That's gotta feel good for the rank-and-file who feel stretched thin and underpaid. And to be fair, they are underpaid relative to their peers in surrounding jurisdictions. But that's where state takeover gets particularly insidious, and where we can prove that the governor's board of commissioners does not have the best interests of the city of St. Louis in mind. Okay, we've got to really quickly talk about this board. The members of the governor's board of commissioners are not, how do I say this? on the level. Don Brown is the owner of a car dealership who has a $5 million conflict of interest because that's how much the police department has paid him for fleet vehicles. And Sonia Jenkins Gray is the only person to ever be fired as the personnel director of the city of St. Louis. It's not a group of people who actually give a damn about the city. They don't, and we can prove it. Earlier this year, the Board of Commissioners approved a 7% raise for SLMPD officers. This is on top of the 7 and 13% raises that the police department got under the former mayor, Tashara Jones. That's when the PD was still under local control. Now, I've already acknowledged that the officers in the city are underpaid, but there's a glaring issue with these raises. Under HB 495, even though the governor and his Board of Commissioners have oversight over the police department and decision-making power, the city still funds the police department. So even though the department is under state control, the city has to pay for everything, including those raises. And the Board of Commissioners didn't even check if we could afford it before they approved the raises. They didn't consult with the city's budget director. They didn't look at a single spreadsheet. They just mandated a 7% raise and told the city to figure it out. This is on top of the fact that HB 495 mandated that the city spend 25% of its general revenue on the police department. But that 25% doesn't include things like police pensions or any litigation. So the cost to the city is way more. And you have to remember that these are our tax dollars. And it turns out we really can't afford this, not without our quality of life getting objectively worse. Remember how I said the police department was understaffed and underpaid? Well, that's true for every city department in St. Louis. The people who pave our streets and plant trees and maintain our water infrastructure, they're stretched thin and underpaid as well. And now they won't be getting any pay raises this year because all that money has to go to the police department raises. And going forward, the city's going to have to make some really scary budgetary decisions because there's a small group of unelected bureaucrats who can force the city to spend as much money as they want. Maybe they decide that the city needs to buy a brand new fleet of police vehicles in the name of public safety. Don't you care about public safety? This arrangement where this Board of Commissioners can force the city to spend any amount of money that they want without consideration for the budget or the rest of the city, this is going to make living in the city of St. Louis that much worse. And that's why it's important to remember that Clybourne Fox Jackson didn't have the best interests of the city in mind, and neither do these folks. The Board of Commissioners have to be approved by the state Senate, and when I first started writing the script for this video, the idea was to create a fast democracy campaign where you could email your senators and ask them to reject Kehoe's Board of Commissioners. But while I was making this video, Missouri Democrats allowed the nominees to sail through the process without any debate and got absolutely nothing in return. If you're watching this, it's too late. The barbarians aren't at the gate, they're in a conference room somewhere, finding new and clever ways to take your tax dollars and give you nothing in return. Thank you for watching. There's a lot of stuff that got cut from this video, like arguments about population decline in the city, demographic makeup of other city departments versus the police department, or the fact that the city of St. Louis was safer under local control than Kansas City was under state control. You can read about a lot of that on my Substack. Like and subscribe, but most of all, share this video so more people can be educated about how poorly they're being represented by their leaders. Thanks again.